there, guys, this is Reckles with WTBGold, and I just got off the plane. I just, like, my ears are still ringing from the descent. I'm not fully unpacked yet, but I just had to get out and talk to you guys about Shadowlands and patch 9.2. Woo! All the cool stuff coming. I'm going to be looking at this specifically from a gold maker's perspective, talking about some of the things that I'm excited about, some of the things that I'm not excited about. Now, I did run into Ian a couple of times, and I did get a chance to talk to him a little bit about professions and gold making. I didn't have my camera with me because I'm silly, but he did just want to say that he's going into this expansion with gold makers and players in mind. So we'll have a lot to talk about in the coming months with professions, but right now I'm just going to go through kind of my geeky nerding out stuff. I'm going to show you a couple clips and kind of give you my thoughts on each individual thing as we go through. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Shadowlands.
So as I mentioned, the Shadowlands has infinite realms, but our journey initially will focus on a few of them. We see Revendreth, Ardenweald, Bastion, and Maldraxxus.
Blah, 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 story, plot, we don't care. Let's move forward.
Covenants are more like a garrison or an artifact in the sense of being what we call internally a build-around feature. They're integrated into every aspect of the game, and they're an essential part of your journey, your progression, your power, and more. Each of these covenants, as you encounter them in your journeys, will seek your aid.
Okay, so we have 4 covenants, essentially: Paladin, Blood Death Knight, Druid, and Warlock. All right, so we got it. And these covenants are going to be really deeply tied into the story, specifically making a choice for which covenant you want. So this makes me think that there are going to be specific profession items that each covenant will teach you. And since this expansion's all about, it's revolving around making that choice.
So unlike the last couple of expansions, we want to get back to having a strong narrative arc that can span multiple zones.
I expect that we might see kind of an Alder versus Scryer choice coming up, where you have specific, in-game crafts that you learn from one covenant that actually impact your gameplay, and then other enchants and glyphs and armor crafts that you can learn in another covenant that may be better for certain things. So for gold makers, if you want to prep, I would recommend getting a couple crafting alts. Like, maybe all total speculation, but like, we have a reason to have multiple alchemists because Transmute Master is great, but we might have a reason to have multiple blacksmiths or multiple tailors going into the next expansion. And there was one part where he talked about how not only does each covenant get its own armor set and mount and unique abilities, of course, but
we want to do more with that to really change the silhouette. So different covenants each covenant will offer a set of cloak replacements or back attachments. So whether you want, a halo or a pair of wings.
So I think it's really likely that we'll have choices to be made for profession recipes. That's exciting for me because that means it's going to be easier to get a monopoly on for the few people that care about a specific craft. Prices, you're not going to have as much competition, so prices are going to be higher. So that's one of the things I'm really, really excited about. One of the things I'm not so excited about is this.
So on your alts, once you have one character that's made it through this journey a single time, we want to say, well, we know, breaking the fourth wall for a second, that you as a player, you understand how the world works. We don't need to teach you how covenants work. We don't need to teach you about the Shadowlands. And on an alt, you can level up through any of the zones in any order that you want. You can do the narrative campaign, if that's what you want to do, or you could go to Revendreth first, or you could spam dungeons, or battlegrounds, or whatever. Endgame systems like world quests will also be available. Ultimately, it's about giving the maximum number of options.
So great, you can immediately enter endgame on an alt. That sounds great, right? Yay. No, that's bad. For crafters, for pretty much everyone out there, that's a really bad thing because, hold on, let me back up. In Nazjatar, let me back up even more. Before Nashitar, I was on my leatherworker. I was selling about 30 of the combatants gear. Selling about 30 of those a day, pumping through a ton of expulsum. It was a massive undertaking, but it was making huge profits, selling each one for 10,000 gold apiece. Then Najiktar came. You didn't need to buy the leveling items from crafters because you could just go to a vendor and get something that was even better. So if you have an alt that can immediately go out and do world quests, you can do the world quests that get you gear, and you never have to go to the auction house and give gold to crafters to get something that's mediocre. So I hope we're going to see a lot of high tier BOE, really OP crafted items that are awesome and really expensive to make and really make someone feel good. But Blizzard doesn't like setting things up to where you can buy eye level. With the WoW token, you can pay real life money to get gold. And so Blizzard doesn't want you to be able to get good gear with gold because it equates to getting good gear with real life money. So they've kind of painted themselves into a box where crafters can't make high eye level gear because you can't buy eye level, and you can't make low eye level gear because no one's going to buy it. So I'm curious to see how Blizzard's gonna make blacksmithing, leatherworking, and tailoring a thing. But there's one saving grace that does give me hope, that lets me think that they're thinking about professions.
So one simple example first. Professions.
Okay. They're thinking about something as simple as professions.
Our core philosophy, a central pillar, has been we want to increase player agency. We want to give all of you a feeling of more control over your destiny. So right now, if you are a leatherworker or a blacksmith or a tailor and you want to make a pair of legs for yourself to wear using raid materials, you probably have a couple of stats in mind. Let's say you want crit haste pants. What if you could take a crit gem and a haste gem and add them as optional materials to your craft and be guaranteed to get a crafted item with the secondary stats you want? So it's a small example. I realize that's not fixing professions, but we also do very much want to make the armor crafting professions relevant in a deeper way at endgame.
So we're going to have some interplay between professions. If you want specific gear, you can combine gems. If you want to sell, there's every class needs haste at the start of the expansion, then you can just buy haste gems and infuse all the armor with haste gems, and then you have guaranteed haste as a stat. That's cool. That's great. That lets people focus on what they need. But at the same time, if they can just get gear through world quests, does it really matter at all? And is that system going to be used?
At the center of the Maw is this mysterious place called Torghast, Tower of the Damned. Yes, this is the tower that you saw sticking out of the sky above Icecrown Citadel. What Torghast is effectively an endless dungeon. It's ever-changing and defies the laws of reality in a lot of ways. As you ascend the tower on visits that will change from run to run, from visit to visit, you can earn permanent upgrades that you can take out with you, but also on the course of your visit, you'll be able to absorb powerful concentrations of anima that massively change and enhance your powers. In addition to Torghast, we have 8 dungeons on offer. Each of these dungeons, of course, comes with the normal modes, Heroic, Mythic, Mythic Plus, with all new affixes coming for each season.
Okay, so this is really, really cool for gold makers. Historically, with the enhancement professions, that's alchemy, jewel crafting, enchanting, all that, you have kind of a spike. Like, people get a lot of gear, they go out, they do raiding, they need to buff themselves up, and then they beat the raid and they don't need to go back, and fewer people go back into the raid, and so those professions have kind of a spike and then a lull until the next raid comes out, and then they spike again. And you have this kind of thing where it's the fun interplay between, like, before that everyone's leveling up and they're using the crafting professions, and then it's the enhancement professions, and then after the raid is done, that's when inscription and engineering really shine, as everyone's leveling up their alts and they're doing pet battles and all that stuff. Well, with this, like, sure, we have a lot of dungeons. We have room for people to push on the Mythic Plus leaderboards, but we also have Torghast, Tower of the Damned. And that's something that sounds like it's going to just be something you can hop into at any time. I'm sure there's going to be a cost to enter, but the Mage Tower was a huge boost to sales in Legion. There was an elixir called Lightblood Elixir in Legion. It came from Argus, and it was just kind of a whatever craft that no one really worried about, until people realized it made the Mage Tower super duper. Well, okay, it didn't make the Mage Tower easy, but it made it a lot more bearable and really boosted your damage. So this means that with Torghast Tower of the Damned, there's going to be a higher than normal level of demand for the enhancement professions. Sure, you're still going to have a spike, but alchemy and enchanting, especially if you get gear out of Torghast, if that's one of the things you can get out of it, then you will always have some people buying enchanting stuff and potions and flasks and crafted food. So it's gonna be great. We're more demand equals more money.
So we want to bring legendaries back in Shadowlands, but rather than have them be randomly obtained, we want them to be something that you can work towards actually crafting through your work in Torghast. You are earning access to legendary powers and then building the legendary that suits your gameplay style, working towards that goal. Then once you accomplish it, picking the next goal you want to work towards and doing so.
Okay, so I actually don't have a whole lot to say about this one. There's gonna be a tier list. There's gonna be a best legendary and there's gonna be a worst legendary. So the hardcore raiders can figure out what those are. But I expect this to be more like the Crafted Legion legendaries, where you have to go out, you kill a boss, you go out and you do a thing over here, and you kill some dudes, and you get your rep up, stuff like that. But one thing we learned from the Crafted Legion legendaries was that Sentinel's Eternal Refuge was really good for farmers. So we may see another thing coming back like that allows players to have flight form or have some little perk that makes farming easier, which is something to look forward to. But also having the Sentinel's Eternal having that tier list at all, if any of these are good and worth having, then we can expect that there's at least going to be some cloth required or ore required or leather required. And so that just does a little bit to boost the demand of those base materials, those farmable, trade your time for gold materials throughout the course of the expansion. And that's something to look forward to. Having a floor where your server always needs a little bit of ore makes it easier for farmers.
As an example, let's look at the Night Phase Covenant ability, Soul Shape. With this, you turn into a Spirit Fox. It gives you a short dash. And also, during the duration, enemies ignore you. One cool thing about this ability, which isn't reflected in the tooltip, is that it's customizable. There's a number of different creatures.
Inscription, baby. That's got glyph written all over it.
So one more glance at what it is right now on live. And when we're done this pretty big job, it's going to play out like this. All starting zones, including our brand new one, are going to be scaled from 1 to 10. This means Death Knight and Demon Hunter as well. And I'll talk about allied races a little bit later. You can then choose any expansion's story to level through, including Battle for Azeroth. And you will level at that point. When you get around 50, you'll go to Shadowlands. You'll be quested naturally there and enter that storyline.
as a whole, this is really, really good for just the health of the game. Like, I've talked to a lot of new people who just started playing WoW in BFA. And it's crazy to think, if you've been playing for 10 or 15 years, that there are BFA babies, but they exist, and there are a lot of them. And I've heard that it takes, like, one person took them 6 months to get from level 1 to 120, playing regularly. So this is really good that it's speeding that time up, it's and aiding the story. But a really cool thing that it does,
You probably want to know what significantly means, and it's, depending on your playstyle, 60 to 70% faster to level from 1 to 50.
it's faster now. It opens the door for power leveling and speed running 1 to 50 or 1 to 60. The fastest run on speedrun.net for 1 to 120 is 22 hours. There aren't a whole lot of times because it's just too long. No one wants to do that. No one wants to start a timer and then stay awake for 24 hours straight. That's rough. But if we get that down to, like they're saying, 30 to 40% of that time, you can start a timer and sit at your computer for 6 to 8 hours and set a record, and then have someone else come along and do it in 5 hours 30 minutes, and someone else come along and do it in 4 hours. So the reason why I'm excited about this is you've got lots of kind of odds and ends, like damage increasing flasks and movement speed stuff and free fall and water walking and all that cool stuff that wouldn't normally sell, but they let you shave 30 seconds off your time, and speedrunners are one of the few people who care about that.
You can think of this as analogous to outdoor time walking, essentially. So you will choose a setting, we'll aim you at the correct story, and you can do all of your leveling all the way up to 50 in which of these stories you want to.
So I was initially kind of worried about this, where does that mean that, like, the Burning Crusade, and if I'm farming Primal Fire and I'm killing Incandescent Fellsparks, does that mean those enemies are going to have the same health as a BFA enemy, which means I'm not going to be able to one-shot with Moonfire these things that we've always been able to farm?
At or around level 50, you'll leave Chromie Time, that outdoor time walking mode, and you will enter Shadowlands with everyone else.
So I think, like, Chromie's actually sending you into kind of a pseudo-phased version of the expansion, and then once you hit max level, or once you leave that phase, you're back in the original world and everything has less health and you can one-shot everything. If that's not the case, no, Blizzard, please no. Please no. Moonfire farming is a super fun way to introduce people to the concept of farming and going out and, like, wait, you can kill these things and get items that you can actually sell. I talk to people who've been playing since vanilla and don't understand that concept of farming things in order to get things that you can sell for gold. And this is, like, 5-man Moonkin farming is a fun social way that we can go out and make gold that was introduced with Legion, and it brought a really solitary, lonely way of playing the game, which was pre-Legion gold making. And it brought it into this version of gold making, which it's a social event now. We stream it, we talk about it. Our groups have 5 people or 8 people, or there are gathering groups that have 10 people going after the rare things. It's a lot of fun, and if we can't one-shot the enemies, then we can't be social. And at its core, WoW is a multiplayer experience. So I hope we can one-shot things so that we can have a multiplayer farming experience. Now, there's another thing that I want to talk about that's maybe not directly impactful. It's called Conduits, and it's really cool. And for this, we're going to head over to the deep dive led by Paul Cubitt.
Okay, the point here is that this is a way to unlock new power over time. After you get to maximum level, you'll continue to increase your character's power by increasing your relationship with these characters. You can also customize your relationship and the power that they give you with a new item type called Conduits. This is Theatar's ability. You can see up at the top there, that's Arrogance. That's where I'd get that ability. Here in the middle, this is a conduit where I've chosen to put in a survivability ability, which will give me DR, damage reduction, at low health. Alternately, I could put in this ability, which improves my healing. So without getting into too much detail, the point here is to give you a system which allows you to choose the soulbind which best suits you.
So this doesn't really affect professions. Like there may be some, if there's a best soulbind conduit, then maybe everyone's gonna go there, and so one particular enchant won't sell as well. Something weird like that might happen. But the reason why I'm excited about this is this really feels like the old school talent trees. It gives you that same level of customization. That's something that people loved. And while I'm actually a big fan of the current talent tree, I think there's a place for that customization. So I'm expecting to see a lot of people who played vanilla or playing classic right now excited about this level of customization, this kind of alternative talent tree. But one other thing that I do want to talk about is Paul Cubitt. He is the lead profession designer, and to my knowledge, he's actually the only profession designer. The way over the course of my past couple BlizzCons, I've talked to some of the devs and figured out like how they actually design the professions. And essentially, Paul Cubitt's the main guy. He's been the main guy since Kata, I think. And anytime a new expansion comes out, they put together kind of a temporary team. So someone from customer relations, someone from the systems engineers, they come on board for a temporary month or 2 month long project, spend a couple hours each day designing the professions and how they want things to work. But this is actually one of the things that I'd really love to see Blizzard change, because what this leads to is kind of a disjointed feel of professions from expansion to expansion, where the people who are designing it aren't the people so like, long story short, the people who are designing professions don't really have a vested interest. They're just checking out a new department, seeing if they like game design, and then they go on about their day. They weren't there for the decision-making process of expansions previously. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to that, but it leads to a really disjointed feel and just kind of stale, like, what did we do last expansion? Let's take that and bump the numbers up. And I think we can do better. Wouldn't it be cool? Like, we're still killing blue dragons. Wouldn't it be cool if, like, the blue dragon scales that we got in vanilla were usable in current content crafts? What if we could make crafting and professions continue telling the story and bring all the expansions together? You can go to the Blackwing Lair raid and get some black dragon scales and use that to imbue a current content item with special abilities. That'd be great. It doesn't have to be gems, haste gems give you haste. Why not incorporate things from previous expansions to bring the game together as a whole? So on that rant, I'm going to leave you guys. We got a whole bunch of new patrons. I was able to shake hands and take pictures with a whole bunch of y'all. Thank you to everyone who came to the Want to Buy Gold meetup. My BlizzCon was absolutely amazing, and I love you guys so much. Thank you to the 84,000 of you who care about listening to me ramble on in YouTube about professions and gold making and this wonderful little niche. I'm excited. We've got a whole bunch of new guide makers coming. The channel expansion is underway. We've got right now 6 new guide makers, so we're gonna have guides coming to you on lore and Mythic Plus and rating and classic. We got classic guides coming out. I listen to you guys. I'm not an expert, so we've got an expert classic gold maker coming to you guys soon. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much for being a part of the channel. Good luck and happy gold making. Also subscribe. We're like really close to 100K and I'm getting antsy. Let's go!